Hello, this is Paul Ritchie. My guest this week is David DeAngelo of the blog of the political blog Two Political Junkies. He's been posting on Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh politics, Pittsburgh and national politics since 2004. And I first heard of him when I was at one of the podcast conferences. I forget which one. I think around 2010. So yes, PodCamp, that was one of the things that inspired me to start entering the blogosphere. So first with my old blog, CSI Without Dead Bodies, and now my new one, Allegheny Independent Media. So so without further ado, okay, so I guess David, you can tell us a little bit about. All right, I'm gonna change the screen here and put up your blog. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Thank you.
Two Political Junkies. So
Oh,
okay, well,
that's
you
today.
can tell
That's
me.
today's blog post.
Yes. So yes, about Doug Mastriano. I guess you said he posted something about with using a video from Tucker Carlson. Is that what
Yeah,
he did?
I'm actually. It's funny because I write early in the morning before work, and sometimes middle of the afternoon I will have completely forgotten what I wrote. Only because I've done it five on average four maybe five times a week, maybe six times a week since as you said 2004, and uh so I'm honestly trying to remember
Okay.
what
Well,
okay, I remember. Yeah, Doug,
I can put it up on the screen. Yeah, there's a video here of Tucker talking
yeah,
about that. And,
Doug was using the thing to complain about how the RNC, there was a report out of Red State, which is I guess a right-leaning news source, about how the RNC had spent a lot of money on things other than candidates. The point that I didn't bring out was that the report or the numbers that he was using are actually from October. So there was like a month in there from the report to the election in November that they just had to kind of guess on. But you can kind of assume that the how they were spending didn't change that much. And he's I guess he's trying to deflect blame for losing so badly onto the fact that the RNC didn't spend any money on him or didn't spend enough money on him.
yeah.
And then what I did was I juxtaposed that with the thing that came out. Oh, the Philadelphia Inquirer. They found through looking at his election forms that he still, after the election, still had like $1 million that he hadn't spent. So you
Oh,
really can't complain about someone not spending money on your campaign if he had $1 million that he didn't spend. So that was just the little snarky thing.
okay.
That
Yeah.
was today. I spent a lot of time writing about Doug Mastriano in the past, I don't know, year or so. Um,
Mhm.
you know,
Certainly, he gives lots of great copy. So
yeah. Yes, the gift that keeps on giving.
I'm sure there must have been
That,
some jealousy of how much ad time Dr. Oz was getting compared to
yeah,
his.
yeah, and those are just two horrible, horrible candidates. And Dr. Oz was actually the replacement to Sean Parnell. Sean Parnell was going to be I guess, or he was en route to being the Senate candidate for the GOP. Um, I think for Senate, because Trump had announced it, and then I guess there were some legal issues that caught up with him, and um, it took him out of the race. So the GOP had to find another candidate, and they found him in New Jersey. Which
Yeah.
I really can't say anything bad about New Jersey because my dad is from New Jersey, but
Mhm.
it's not Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, I mean, David McCormick, he was from Connecticut too. So
As am I, so I can't complain about Connecticut.
yeah. But I wouldn't just move to Connecticut and say, "Hey, I'm going to be your senator."
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. But
So,
Connecticut is a nice place, as is New Jersey. I mean, it takes a lot of heat, but there like every place, there's some very nice places in New Jersey and very not so nice places of New Jersey.
okay. Yeah, and I guess so. Yes, there's this one story I see here about. Oh, yes, I did read that about the mail-in ballots. Like a lot of them were excluded, and the
Yeah,
vast
and most of them
majority of
were
those were
Democratic
Democrats.
Democratic ballots. And the fact, I mean, that whole story is a bit weird because I mean, Trump himself mailed in his ballot. So the
Hmm.
whole party is up in arms over the possible fraud about mail-in ballots, even though the military uses mail-in ballots and has done since I think the Civil War, last I checked. But Trump himself used a mail-in ballot, and for
Hmm.
them to complain about too many people, that's going to cause fraud. It's just um, silly,
Hmm.
to be
I mean,
honest.
I know. I guess it could have had a big influence. Yeah, I mean, you wrote about how it had a big influence. Could have had it, could have given Oz and Fetterman and Shapiro bigger margins, but it could
Yeah,
also affect the down ballot races too.
yeah. And I think from what little I've seen, there are. Yeah, I mentioned this, that there are some Republicans, at least, who are grumbling over the fact that Mastriano, and let's define down ballot. You have the headliner. If it's the
Yeah.
president or the governor or whatever, and then there's the people who are farther down the ballot,
Mhm.
the local rate of more local races, if it's the House or the state House or whatever. And there are a lot of people who will go in who are loyal to their party and vote the party ticket,
Mhm.
and so everyone gets a vote for that party. Or if someone will go in and vote for the top person and then vote for their party on the way down, but if the top person doesn't do well, then it can actually trickle down, is not the right word, but it can affect votes going to down ballot tickets. And there are those who are complaining that that's what happened in Pennsylvania, and so the House flipped to the Democrats, probably because Mastriano was such
Mhm.
a lousy candidate, and probably Oz too.
Mhm.
And boo freaking who?
Yeah. Okay. So like, would you say, I mean, obviously, I mean, I know, would you say you get more traffic like when it gets close to election time?
Um, I don't really know. It's hard to gauge traffic at the blog. I've got a couple of counters on it, and the numbers never match. So I
Mhm.
never actually pay much attention to the exact numbers because I'm not sure which one is right, or if both are wrong, or both are wrong differently, or whatever. Um, but when big things happen, if the blog gets mentioned someplace, or if it gets retweeted a lot on Twitter, then that'll kick up some traffic.
So like your commenters, would you say, do they get more like your commenters, do you get more angry comments or
Actually, I turned off the comments. I turned off the comments
really?
for my posting. If Maria posts, she's I don't do anything with hers because they're her
Hmm.
blog
Yes.
posts. Once I figured once the virus hit, I turned off the comments because I didn't want anyone to be using the comments to spread, ivermectin works, or all you have to do is take
Yeah.
zinc, or it's just the
Mhm.
common cold. I mean, if someone believes that, they can write it in their own blog, but they're not going to use mine. So
Hmm.
I thought the amount of work that it would take to kind of pick and choose which comment to go with, I
Hmm.
said it's not worth it. So I just turned off all the comments.
Yeah, I
And if,
guess.
if I post something in Twitter and I get a comment there, that's fine. But not on my blog. I mean, I thought I mean, if you're just arguing just politics, that's
Hmm.
that's one thing. But if someone uses a comment to spread misinformation that
Hmm.
someone else can read and then get sick from and then possibly
Yes.
die, I don't want to be a part of that what's the word,
Alert.
communication chain.
Yeah.
So I just turned off, just I write the thing in the morning, turn off the comments, and then so I haven't actually had a comment. Um, and I think you have, yeah, I haven't had a comment in a
Mhm.
very long time. And every now and then something will, someone will not really break in, but get through the bloggers security, because you have to have a blogger account to
Yeah.
comment on the thing.
Mhm.
And so every now and then there'll be an ad for, a newspaper in New Delhi or Asian porn or whatever. And whenever
Yeah.
I see those, I just bounce them. They don't have anything to. And it's weird because something every now and then, maybe once every 6 months, will come in and comment on a blog post from 2010. And I don't
Mhm.
think anyone is looking at those blogs anyway. So why someone would
Yeah.
spend the amount of the effort to get a fake blogger account to post a comment on a blog post that no one's going to see anyway. I don't understand the logic of that, but there's a lot of things I don't understand.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I noticed you don't post like on your Facebook account, or you don't have a Facebook page for your blog, like to
Um,
promote.
yeah, I don't really. I never really thought of it. Yeah,
Well,
and I
I
like to keep
mean,
my personal Facebook page apolitical.
mhm.
I used to post links to it, and I thought, there's some people that I went to high school with that I just don't feel like arguing with.
Mhm.
So I figured, well, the blog is the blog, and the personal Facebook, and it's locked. The Facebook account is locked under however many layers of Facebook security. You can't find it unless you're already a friend of mine, or a
Yeah.
friend of a friend, maybe, or if
Mhm.
I comment on something, So it's pretty well locked down. Again, because
Okay.
I'm just not interested in seeing anyone post, about ivermectin or zinc,
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
how it,
makes sense.
whatever, any of the
Okay.
misinformation that's
Well,
worked its way around.
well, I guess, I mean, I know you probably get a lot of feedback on your posts anyway, so yeah, from other channels.
Yeah, yeah, every now and then.
And you have
Yeah.
you have like buttons on your posts. I know some.
Um, no, actually, no, I don't.
Okay.
If there's something on Twitter, uh, I get a lot. Yeah, I'll post a like a little I'll post a link on Twitter if I've written something, and then yeah, I get a lot of likes there. And there are a couple of people who are in the area who will retweet and like and comment and
Hmm.
things like that. Oh, okay. Just heard a noise.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I guess so. Maria Lupinacci, she's your partner. Well, she's your partner in the blog.
Yeah, yeah. She's actually the person who came up with the name,
Hmm.
and kind of basically designed the whole thing back in 2004.
Hmm.
And because we had been, I'll tell you the story. It was 2004. I was, as they say, in between jobs, and Maria was working from home, and we were watching, and we knew each other from the local Howard Dean campaign in
Okay.
2003. Yeah, 2003, I guess, which had crashed and burned in January of that year, I think. And so we've been emailing back and forth just about, stuff. And she had said that she watched the Hunsberger Live, which was on
Yeah.
PCNC at the time. And I clicked into watch. She said, "Oh yeah, I'm the Maria that calls in all the time." And I had been reading Lies and the Lying Liars That Tell Them,
Mhm.
Al Franken.
Yeah.
And so our first blog was actually Hunsberger is a Liar, which has since, decayed into nothingness on the internet. And what we did was we watched Fred that day and then transcribed what we could, and then basically looked up the facts um, that he used to, prove his case and show why he was basically lying. And because
Mhm.
the first one, still remember the first one I wrote, someone had called in and was complaining about unemployment, and this is 2004. So this is still during the George W. Bush administration. No, George W. Bush. Yeah, not Herbert Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And so Fred shut him down by saying that the economy had produced 1.4 jobs per second since September. You said this in April.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, how much is that? So I took out a calculator and I said, well, there was about 7 months. And so I go, okay, 7 months, 30 days, 210 days times 24 times 60 times 60. And then I did the number and I thought, well, let me make sure that I'm as close to the truth as possible. So I counted the number of days. It was
Mm-hmm.
actually, I think, 212 from the first, I think it was the first day of April to the back to the first day of September, and then counted the number of seconds, multiplied that by 1.4, and I think it was seconds, 1.4, and then divided that by 7, and it turned out that it was somewhere around like 79,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So it was true, but the thing is that economists use the number about 120,000 on average jobs have to be created every month just in order to keep up with population growth.
Yeah.
So the first one I posted was explaining all that and say, okay, here's Fred telling the truth about the job number, but doing it in such a way that it was actually dishonest, because he was trying to say that it was a big number, because you think, wow, 1.4 jobs per second, that's got to be a big number, but it was actually way under what had to be the what economists thought of as the minimum number just to keep afloat in as the population grows, and it was somewhere around 125,000, 130,000, something like that. And so from there, we just kind of were fact checking Fred. And then by the end of that summer, Maria wanted to branch out into just doing national topics and not, this is what Fred said, because he wasn't broadcasting on the weekends either.
Yeah.
And so she came up with the name Two Political Junkies, and the number two, because when you have a list of names and you alphabetize them, the numbers go first. And then everything is alphabetized. She said that's why if you look in yellow pages, I don't know if there are yellow pages anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking for a plumber, it's A1 Plumbing or Apex Plumbing or Acme Plumbing or whatever, because
Yeah.
the A is at the top, and that will be, people will start at the top of the list and work their way down. So Acme Plumbing will get a lot more eyeballs than Zeke's Plumbing down at the bottom. And so she did the Two Political Junkies because that's the number two. And so when people were doing blog rolls and alphabetizing them, we were close to the top of the list anyway,
Oh, that's clever.
And then I think by September or so of 2004, we weren't writing at the Hansberger blog anymore. And I think we locked it down. And then I'm pretty sure you can't find it anymore, because when he passed away in whenever that was, I didn't feel comfortable about having this blog about him when he died.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Okay.
he turned out to be I mean, I agreed with absolutely nothing of his politics, but I met him a couple of times on QED, and very nice guy. I mean, I was sad when he passed away,
Yeah.
and as I said, I agreed with absolutely nothing of his politics, but and I don't think he was insincere about his politics. And on the radio, on the news, I
Yeah.
think he just turned up the volume a little. But perfectly nice guy.
I'm sure it's pretty mild to see some of the, compared to some of the vitriol you might hear now.
Yeah, I'd love to see what he would say about the MAGA folks.
Hmm.
Um, and it was interesting that when Jack Kelly, I used to write a lot about Jack Kelly at the Post Gazette. When Donald Trump first hit the scene, he was a never Trumper. Jack was a never Trumper, and so I don't know what's happened since to Jack, but he's no longer at the Post Gazette. I think he signed off by saying he had cancer as well.
Hmm.
but I don't know any part of the story after that.
Well, I mean, I used to do some of the same thing. I remember Jim Quinn in Pittsburgh and
Oh, yeah, Jim Quinn. Yeah, I
and
remember.
Rose. I guess Rose. I think she filled in for Sean Hannity one day.
Yeah, and she was at the Capitol on January 6th. So whenever I see a thing that she's broadcasting on KDKA, I've done this a couple times at the blog. Um, just why is she on the air? She
Hmm.
was she was at the she was one of the either featured speakers or special guests at the Stop the Steal rally. Same
Yeah,
thing. Mastriano was there. Roger Stone. I mean, all the people that were subpoenaed. And you go, why is Rose Tennant actually on the air? I
yeah.
mean, because if they put her on the air, then they have to accept some of her credibility, um,
Hmm.
and accept some of that as their own on KDKA. And um, she's not just a voice doing a particular political line. She was actually at the Capitol. Uh, I don't think she was. I don't think anyone's seen a picture of her walking around in, like
Hmm.
following Doug around on the other side of the police barricades. I don't think there's any of that. But she was part of the whole organization beforehand.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. Is there any evidence that Wendy Bell was there?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think she was there because she at the time she would post stuff on her Facebook page. Um, and I don't think she was at the I mean she had I'm trying to remember exactly. I mean, to her it was, just a group of people milling around. Um, and on the one hand, she said the violence is a bad thing, but then she agreed with I mean, she's a big election denier.
Hmm.
She's had a number of people on her show, back when she was broadcasting from her basement,
Yeah.
or wherever it was in her house. Like there was a statistician from Michigan who had proven that the election had to have been faked, even though when the Republicans, I think there was a Republican committee in the Senate in Michigan, basically said, "Yeah, there's nothing there." To quote Gertrude Stein, "There's no there there."
Yeah.
So yeah, so Wendy's a big election denier,
Hmm.
and and she blocked me from her Facebook page and her Twitter feed. So I can't. It's a badge of courage, a badge of honor, but I can't actually see what she posts. I have to see what people react to,
Hmm.
and then try to dig it out of
Okay. I
Twitter.
did see a video of an interview she did with Trump. When
Oh, okay.
Trump said he was going to pardon all the the January 6th protesters, and she said, "Amen."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She actually invited me on her program, um, uh, to have a weekly spot on her program, and they wanted to get me a sponsor so that I would
Mhm.
get paid.
Yeah.
And I thought, she's getting paid by a number of different people, and you can go to her website to see who her sponsors are. Um, and she gets paid, and some of the stuff that she spews out is,
Mhm.
the misinformation from wherever about, say, the virus. And I thought, there's no way I want I don't have time, number one. Number
Mhm.
two, even if I did have time, there's no way I would take that money to be
Mhm.
on her show. And there's something that I learned from calling into Fred's television show,
Mhm.
that if you call in, you never win the argument, because whoever is in the studio, in this case, it would be Brock, Wendy's producer,
Mhm.
they have the volume button, they have the dump button. They can hang up on you whenever they want. And then Wendy gets to keep talking. So if I do a segment on her show, then Wendy can comment on it and edit it, and it's out of my control. And I thought, well, I can control what I write on the blog. She's certainly free to write in, but to go onto her playing field, I would just always lose. Even
Yeah.
if I was absolutely correct, I would always lose because she would always have the last word. And then
Yeah.
accepting money from the same people that pay her, to undermine the vaccines. How many people have gotten sick because they listened to Wendy Bell?
Mhm.
She used to post on her website the I don't know why she calls them BS boards, but she calls them BS boards,
Mhm.
and she calls them BS boards, and she routinely uses the VAERS numbers, VAERS
Yeah.
numbers, to try to show that the vaccines are unsafe, without actually posting that in order to get to those numbers on the government website, you have to click through the disclaimer that says that the the numbers are self-reported, that they are uh, they're not to be used to set policy. And she completely omits that part, but
Yeah.
she says, there's been 10,000 or whatever the number is, people getting sick after taking the vaccine. So how many people listened to that and they said, well, I'm not going to get the vaccine, and they got sick? There's I don't know what the exact number would be, but there have to be people in Pennsylvania who've gotten sick simply because they listened to Wendy Bell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been inactive with the coronavirus task force here in Cambria County, and we've had over 800 deaths.
Oh,
And, I mean,
I
hard to say how many of them were vaccinated or not, but certainly, I mean, yes, there is still a stubborn minority that still refuses to get the vaccine.
and there have now been some studies about the estimating the number of people who died needlessly,
Mhm.
if they didn't take I mean, there were certainly people who couldn't take the vaccine because they were immunocompromised for whatever reason, but then there was a lot of people who chose not to get vaccinated, simply because they thought there was poison in it, or
Mhm.
the government was going to track them, or it would change their DNA, or turn the frogs gay, or whatever Alex Jones says. Um, and
Mhm.
so, if some of the estimates, I think the Kaiser Foundation, I think they did a thing of estimating how many people died because they didn't get vaccinated, even when it was universally available, and the number is in the hundreds of thousands, um, which someone has to live with that for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I mean that
But
should be the first rule of politics. Don't kill your supporters.
yeah, and the fact that the rates of death are higher in Republican areas than in Democratic areas, because Republicans tend to be much more vaccine deniers than Democrats.
Yeah.
Um, which is just insane to me. And so, I mean, imagine taking money from companies to say that they're wrong about the virus, even when they're using their money to help Wendy spread the misinformation. It was all dirty money, and I
Mhm.
wasn't going to have any part of it.
Yeah. Well, it was a wise decision. So,
Well, you
I
know, and
mean, I mean,
and
you
I
can you can see you
can't.
can see like what happened to Alex Jones and the big lawsuit he had.
Yeah. And I have a hard time just listening to Wendy's voice, but that's more aesthetic than anything else.
I guess.
You
Well,
know.
she used to be like Kari Lake. She used to be an anchor and like a
Yeah,
news
she was on,
anchor, responsible news anchor
yeah,
until I
she was
guess
on
she
TAE.
was removed from WTAE for like some racially motivated posts.
Yeah, it was something she posted on Facebook, and I read it, and as I'm reading, because I learned the news, you watch the thing and then go, well, let me go see what she posted. I found it, and as I'm reading, I'm going, oh, she's going to get into such trouble about this, because the description of the young African American man who was bussing tables at the Cheesecake Factory,
Mhm.
just the imagery that she was using, he was smiling and he was dancing, and you go, oh, yeah, she's going to get into trouble for that. And she did. And she got fired from TAE, and then she got
Yeah,
fired from KDKA radio,
yeah,
uh,
but
for
yeah,
the solution for people protesting Confederate monuments. The park
Mhm.
police just shoot them, bang, and she actually did
Okay.
this with her hand at the
Yeah.
camera, and so she
Well,
got tossed from
isn't she
here.
working for Newsmax now? I
Yeah,
thought.
she's got a Newsmax show. At least last I checked, I haven't spent any time at Newsmax.
Mhm.
Uh, but you got to remember the Pittsburgh connection. There's always a Pittsburgh connection to everything. Newsmax is owned by Christopher Ruddy, Ruddy,
Yeah.
not to be confused with Dennis
Like.
Roddy, who used to write
Yeah.
for the Post Gazette, and I think he
Or
was a part
Jim
of the.
Roddy.
I'm sorry.
Or Jim Roddy.
Or Jim Roddy, who was a county executive.
Executive.
But Christopher Ruddy was employed by Richard Mellon Scaife at the Tribune Review to do all of the Arkansas Project writing back
Yeah.
in the 90s. And
Mhm.
so what Ruddy did was he would have articles posted in the Tribune Review to get them into kind of the news circulation. And
Mhm.
then other conservatives would then accuse regular newspapers, non-Tribune Review newspapers, of ignoring the story that's already been posted in the Tribune Review.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was a Tribune Review, and that was Richard Mellon Scaife. And for a while, Richard Mellon Scaife owned, I think, 40% of Newsmax back when he was alive.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's always fascinating. Follow the money.
Yeah, follow the money. Follow the money. Always follow the money.
Yes. Like I remember I was at Netroots Nation and they talked about another right wing billionaire named Jeff Yass,
Oh,
who's
okay.
from Central Pennsylvania, who's been funding lots of right wing candidates.
Oh,
I
okay.
Yeah, I'd never heard his name before. I guess this was the Netroots. What Netroots Nation is?
Yeah, yeah. I went to the one in 2009.
Yeah, I think they were there last summer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I that's the first time I'd heard of Jeff Yass. So being like sort of like a local version of the Koch brothers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
It was always fascinating back when Scape was alive of tracking a little of his money because he was at the foundation of ALEC. I don't know if you heard of ALEC. ALEC is the American Legislative Executive Council or something,
okay, yeah,
and
yeah,
it was
I've heard of it. Yes.
it was a loose conglomeration of this kind of organization of state legislators
Mhm.
pushing basically all the same bills in Pennsylvania or Oregon or Oklahoma or whatever. And when you dug into the history of it, he was at the beginning of the funding. He did some seed money for it. I can't remember how much it was. But an interesting story about Scaife. I found this in the Washington Post, 1999. Because the story always about Scaife was that he was using the paper, and this ended up being an issue in his divorce as to whether the paper was a business expense or a hobby. And I can't remember how it played out, and so I'm not going to take any position as to who was right and who wasn't. But whether he was using the Tribune Review to inject conservative ideas or conservative reporting into the news by owning a Pittsburgh newspaper. Well, it was in the end of the 60s. The CIA was looking for a way to have more positive reporting on the Vietnam War, and so they came up with the idea of something called I think it was the World Features Forum or the World Forum Features or something, which was a news organization like the United Press International, AP, Associated Press, or Reuters, or whatever, and it was mostly credible and mostly legitimate
Mhm.
to give it credibility, knowing that every now and then there'd be a positive Vietnam story about how well the military was doing in Vietnam, and it was owned by some British guy. I can't remember the name. And for whatever reason, he had to sell, and the CIA went to find someone to fund the project. And who they found was Richard Mellon Scaife in the very early 70s. And so what he's accused, or he was accused of doing with the Tribune Review a decade and a half later, he had already done with this news organization. And I think there was a magazine out of London that kind of blew the lid off it. And basically, it was done by 1974. But it was interesting to track that. Took me a couple of days of digging to find that. And I think, as I said, it was in the Washington Post,
Okay.
just a few paragraphs in an article, you know.
So yeah, okay. Well, we have about 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so like one thing, like so what is your regular day job?
Oh, I work in my house, working for a local insurance company.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, you got to pay the bills.
Yeah, got to pay the bills, and I like the paycheck, so I keep that very separate from the blogging.
Okay. So they never said so they never commented or give you any negative feedback.
No, and I never brought it up. I mean, my name is certainly in the news. I mean, anyone
Yeah.
can Google the name and find the blog.
Hmm.
But I keep the two very separate. So when I'm on the job, I don't do any social. I'm on kind of on radio silence. I don't do any kind of
Okay.
social media stuff at all. Just so that if I'm getting paid, then I'm not doing the blog, and when I'm not getting paid, then I'm free to do the blog.
Okay. Well, I'm sure, I guess maybe in the early days it was almost like the Wild West.
Yeah,
But now I guess now there's a lot more competition. So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I still, I still find, like you, I still enjoy the process of informing people and trying to help people see patterns that aren't easy to see with the naked eye.
Yeah.
So, so yes, I mean, sound like some of that you did. Some of what you did, say with Hans Berger, sounds like a lot of what I do. So,
Yeah, I spent with Scaife. I spent a lot of time, as I said, when he was still alive.
well, we have,
He-
yeah, well, we have less than a minute, so
oh, okay, okay,
I think we might have to just say goodbye.
okay,
So I'm gonna stop recording now, and well, yeah, and then I have to upload it to my website. I'll be happy to
okay. Sounds good.
share it with you when we're done.
Okay,
Okay, well,
thank you
have
very
a
much
good
for your
day, and
time.
well, thanks. Yes, it was a very good interview. I appreciate. Yeah, very interesting talk.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.